Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here. My name is Alice Sheehan, and while we're waiting for people to join, um, we're going to go ahead and share some links that you'll need throughout this presentation. Um, Feel free to open them in tabs as we get started. Also, we would love to hear from you. We can't really see your faces because of this format, but if you would like to, go ahead and put where you're joining us from in the chat. And you can even practice reacting. We'll have a few things throughout this presentation where you can react. Um, and so go ahead and practice doing that so we can make sure that this all is working on the tech end. As we go through the presentation today, Adriel from the AllSides team will be monitoring for questions, and we will pause for questions about midway through. Great. All right. So let's go ahead and get into the presentation. Hold on just 1 minute. It looks like we are having a little bit of an issue sending the links to you. Send that here. So here are the links we're going to need. So we're using Mentimeter so that we can kind of interact today. And then we've got 3 other links that we'll go into throughout the presentation. So we thought those would be helpful to share up front. All right, Preeti, if you want to go to the next slide. The first thing I really want to know from you all today is what brings you here. So if you go to menti.com and use the code that's at the top of the slide, you can actually interact and let us know why you're here. And it'll show up here. So first, we're going to just share some information, about 30 minutes of sit and get, and talk about why AllSides is a great tool for digital literacy, and really share how AllSides is already helping schools across the US build critical thinkers and empathetic communicators. It's really what we're all about. But then we're excited to show you with a fun hands-on activity that I think you'll enjoy, where we'll actually dig into a hot topic. Excellent. I see some results coming in. People are concerned about misinformation, concerned about media bias. And then I love that you want to teach kids how to think and not what to think. That is our whole goal here, is not to tell people what to think, but to just teach them how to think, or yeah, how to analyze information and come to a decision on their own. So really happy to see those results. You can go to the next slide, Preeti. So today we're going to dive into challenges that so many people and educators are facing. It's become really difficult, as you know, to navigate this constantly changing, divisive, toxic media landscape. And from a lot of the teachers that we work with, we often hear about additional challenges like time constraints, fear of backlash, or not being supported by admin, or just simply finding real content to give to students so they can apply media literacy concepts in a real way. And we wanted to find a better way to give this to you so that you didn't have to just like dig through the AllSides website. And so that's where this idea for this webinar came from. We offer solutions that address all of these challenges. About 10 years ago, we started AllSides, just a tool for finding bias in the news and presenting balanced perspectives. And pretty soon, teachers and librarians from all over were getting in touch with us and asking us to optimize our resources for students and for them and for the classroom. And before we knew it, we were being used in schools and libraries in all 50 states. We also help teach civics through experiences. So students can use AllSides to cultivate life skills such as their daily news consumption habits, that go beyond just one lesson or unit. So today we're going to go through why those educators find AllSides so useful, and then how you can use our resources to teach current events confidently in today's polarized society. But first, I want to introduce the other faces that are on this, that you can see on this webinar. So if you go to the next screen, my name's Alice Sheehan. I'm the Director of School Programs for AllSides, and I'm located in Denver. I'll pass it over to Preeti.
Hi everyone, I'm Preeti. I'm from Clarksburg, Maryland. I'm an incoming sophomore at the George Washington University, and I'm also a Mismatch coordinator for AllSides. And I'll pass it off to Henry.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. I'm Henry Brechter. I'm from the Boston area, Bridgewater, Mass. I'm the editor-in-chief, so I oversee all of our content, and I've been here just over 5 years now. Adriel?
Hey everyone, my name's Adriel. I live in Nashville, Tennessee. I've been at AllSides for about 2 years now, and I manage our memberships and support some of our bias work. And I'm also a former educator, which is why I'm here today. Glad you're here.
Thanks, everybody. And now Henry's going to dive into some of our offerings.
Yeah, thanks, Alice. So, like Alice alluded to a second ago, media literacy, critical thinking, these things are more than just a single lesson or a single unit in the classroom, right? They're a habit that really need to be cultivated and built up, and they've never been more important. So, teachers can grow this habit in the classroom, teaching students, guiding students to embrace their curiosity and to build a desire and that curiosity to always find multiple perspectives on the big issues of the day or issues that matter, whatever issues that come up in the classroom. So this is where AllSides can help. We provide tools that help students easily analyze and identify multiple perspectives, building those healthy news habits, building an understanding of diverse peoples, diverse communities. So what you're looking at here is essentially our three core offerings across the site, but especially for schools in this case. One is our balanced news feed, which just shows news and perspectives from a diverse array of sources every day. Then you have our media bias resources. This is more about the bias in the news and among the different sources and helping you spot that day to day. And then we have our dialogue opportunities. So this is actually actively enabling people to connect directly with others across differences, in situations that they'd probably never find themselves in otherwise, to have communication, build those core civic skills. Next slide, thank you. So yeah, there are obviously huge problems with how information is consumed in today's world. Now we have AI adding to the already overwhelming amount of information available, especially online. And meanwhile, no one knows who to trust. So if you look at surveys, public opinion surveys like the Gallup poll or Reuters, trust in U.S. media is at or near historic lows, like as bad as it's ever been. Next slide. So there are some common responses to this overload. We have very little time in our daily routines for reading the news. So when we finally do, it's common to react to things we disagree with or things that make us uncomfortable by getting upset, by turning away, by sealing ourselves into those bubbles and like retreating to those more familiar narratives. So obviously that's anti-critical thinking, anti the AllSides mission. But unfortunately, the way the internet is set up makes that way too easy to do. Algorithms on social media, algorithms in Google and other search engines just feed more of what people want to see. So that in turn feeds, all the polarization we see in politics and media, and one side seems so shocked about what the other side thinks, and they can't even have a conversation about it. So we want to do a quick show of hands. You can use the React tool in the webinar, but how many of you have hesitated to teach students about an important issue due to fear of backlash? And again, you can use that hand up button there at the bottom. Cool, at least a few. And if you haven't, well, good for you. It's a tough situation to be in for sure. Go ahead, Adriel. Oh,
As
sorry,
a
you muted.
former educator myself, I've certainly run into the issue of um, teaching current events. And we hear a lot from other teachers that they worry about teaching the daily news due to this fear of backlash, or just general concerns on how to navigate, often very complex and emotional topics with students. And some teachers just don't want to reveal their own bias in the classroom. They want to teach objectively with a clean slate. And so at AllSides, we're really concerned with helping teachers teach students the process of thinking without teaching them what to think. And we really are interested in answering the question about how educators can teach current events in the news equitably and objectively. So at AllSides, we recognize that everyone is biased, and that's okay. There's never going to be a perfectly unbiased way to present something, but we really want to mitigate that bias and find strategies to expose bias. So we never want to silent dissent, and we don't ever want to encourage a free for all, but we do believe that multiple perspectives is essentially what it takes to move toward a more balanced news diet. We want to enable healthy, complete, respectful examination of differing opinions, and help students discuss often contradicting ideas and information. So ultimately, this culminates in teaching students how to think, but then putting it in practice by giving them opportunities to engage in dialogue across differences. Um, so this applies to students in two main ways. We here at AllSides approach this through civic readiness that we believe can build resilient communities. Um, we want students to basically be unsatisfied if they only get one side of the story. We want them to be excited, not afraid to engage in conversations across differences. And ultimately, we want this to foster curiosity rather than isolation. And when students do this, we find that they really sort of build this foundation of respect and understanding that is a huge component of being ready for civic life, that eventually I think leads to really strong communities that can withstand disagreements and that can withstand larger challenges overall. So to accomplish this, students need kind of two things. They need this foundation of uh, civics that is rooted in these habitual approaches to information, rather than just sort of a laundry list of do's and don'ts. And so we've broken this up into two categories, one of which is news literacy, which looks like teaching students how to navigate the news. It's not enough just to read the news, but really in our current climate, it's something that students need to learn how to navigate, how to analyze and think critically, to be on the lookout for overt bias, for hidden bias, for misinformation. Um, and then we want them to take those skills, those analytical skills, and put them into practice with dialogue. So it's really no good if all this learning stays within the walls of the classroom. We want students to be able to have conversations with people who um, agree or disagree with them, to be curious, and ultimately to practice understanding and respect. Yeah, Henry?
Thank you. Okay, so a bit more about those great tools that we mentioned a few minutes ago. So one is the All Sides Balanced newsfeed. That's what you see here. This is a daily comprehensive look at big stories from all different points on the political spectrum, from left to center to right. Sorting news in this way allows readers, students, whoever, to easily identify different points of view and therefore expand their understanding of whatever their community's top issues are. Again, this is learning how to think about issues from the different sides, right? Not just what to think. On our website, it also goes out daily in newsletter form and on different social media like Instagram, where we have over 250,000 followers. We're also working now to scale this to the state level. So every state and eventually every city and town will have its own balanced news feed. So that's the next step for this, but that's a little further up. At the core of all of this is the media bias ratings. The balanced news and a lot of the other content we do would not be possible if we did not position news sources on the chart in this way. So the media bias chart is there on the left. This displays just some of the top U.S. news sources and where they fall from left to right. But in total, we're now rating close to 2,000 sources. And this is all built around our multi-partisan bias rating methodology. Sorry, that's always a mouthful. But you get a little hint of that on the right, where we show you how we came up with each rating. So you see there's an editorial review there. That's when AllSides team members, Adriel and myself, participate in some of those reviews, where we sit down with a balanced group of team members and look at the bias of one source. We also have our blind bias surveys. So that's where we leverage our balanced audience to read the content of a source and rate what they think the bias is. The catch is that they can't see where it came from. So they don't know if they're reading a CNN article or a Fox article. They can only see the text. Basically, that combination of expert analysis with our panel reviews and then the public opinion element through the survey is the best way and the only way to get close to a consensus on what a media bias rating should be. Because at its core, bias is subjective. People can say Fox News is on the right. People could say it's on the left. It's ultimately a matter of opinion. But this combination, which others that try to do this don't do, is really the only way to get close to that consensus. So that's what our ratings are built around. So if you want to learn more about that methodology, I think we sent that link earlier. If we didn't, we should. Okay,
All right.
now it's...
All right. So we've talked a lot about news literacy throughout this presentation, but about 5 years ago, AllSides realized that polarization in our society wasn't just about information bubbles, it was also about relationship bubbles, people interacting with people who are very similar to them ideologically. The majority of students in America also face the same problem, usually growing up with people who are ideologically homogenous, they grow up the same way, and they're not really able to explore outside that bubble. That's why AllSides developed Mismatch. We piloted Mismatch in 2019 with about 1,000 students, and of the 300 students that participated in Mismatch, 83% noted a higher appreciation of other perspectives after using it, and 100% of their teachers agreed. I know that as a student, I craved the opportunity for something like this. I craved the ability to interact with those with different perspectives than me. Attending an all-girls Catholic high school was an ideologically homogenous environment for myself, because a lot of my classmates grew up with very similar upbringings, definitely similar religious backgrounds, and I wasn't really able to push my thinking beyond that. That's when I discovered the bridging space, leading me to co-found my own nonprofit called the Global Compromise Collective, and then eventually that leading to my work at AllSides. I wanted to do what I wasn't really able to do in high school. I wanted to expand my horizons and learn more about how to best connect with people with different perspectives from me. I really found that in Mismatch. Mismatch allows students to connect across demographic differences, meaning racial, socioeconomic, residential. Mismatch really allows students to get outside their comfort zone without stepping outside the classroom. And Mismatch makes scheduling these conversations easy. When you sign up for Mismatch, you're immediately shown a list of classrooms who are automatically mismatched from you based on your classroom profile and your availability. Once you schedule a conversation, students use guides from our partner organization, Living Room Conversations, to help make sure the conversations go smoothly and to give some structure to the overall dialogue. For a free conversation, use code Early Adopters, and we hope you'll try out Mismatch. And I'll pass it to Alice.
Thanks, Preeti, and thanks for sharing your perspective as a student. That's one reason we love having you on our team, among many. So many teachers choose to integrate all these tools we just went through, and there's many more on the AllSides website, into existing curriculum. But we know that every classroom is unique, so we try to be really flexible. A lot of teachers use the balanced news feed to discuss current events or create their own lesson plan around the media bias chart. But for those who do want a lesson plan or want to build off of a lesson plan, this is our suggested classroom flow. So you would start with a polarization and bias lesson plan where students would define polarization and then identify its causes and consequences. And then they define bias and identify its relationship to polarization. Then they move on to how to spot media bias lesson. So that's really working on their news literacy skills by introducing students to the most common types of media bias and then real examples from news articles from across the political spectrum. Then after that, we wanted to insert a lesson that's really focused on dialogue. So they've learned some of the kind of basic terminology and definitions of bias and polarization, but we know that it's not just about that information, it's about putting it together and putting it into your relationships with other people. So that's where the relationships first lesson plan comes in. And that was created in partnership with Living Room Conversations, who's been creating dialogues guides for the past 20 years. And they're really the experts in this space. Once students understand those basics, or what we consider the basics, then they can engage with real world experience using the comparing bias lesson plan, where they use some of the skills they learned to spot bias in the news across different media outlets. Then they can wrap it all up with a media bias research report, where they really apply the skills and combine critical reading and analytical writing. If you're short on time, we recommend omitting steps 3 and 5 to give people the foundational understanding when it just comes to kind of digital literacy and misinformation and bias. You could also rearrange all of this. For example, relationships first is a great way to start out the year, delving into effective interpersonal communications before students go into polarization and bias. And if you have time to spare, there's more lesson plans on the website on complex topics like free speech, healthcare, gun control, climate change, things like that. If you can go to the next slide. So all of this is available at allsides.com/schools. The lesson plans, the balanced news feed, all of it is there for you to explore. So I encourage you to check it out and poke around. And you can explore a lot of these resources for free, and that's really by design. So many schools have chosen to just use the resources integrated into curriculum, and many others have actually chosen to work with us directly through school memberships. And so I wanted to share a little bit more about that. We have a couple premium features that will be released to school memberships this year. One of them, if you can go to the next slide, Preeti, I have a little demo video of here. So what this is we call it our AllSides bias checker. And I'll wait for it to load. There we go. So basically what the bias checker does is it gives you the ability to check the bias of an article on demand. So it takes the power of our media bias rating system that Henry described, and it really puts it in your hands. So we worked on this for about a year now, carefully calibrating it to provide the same or similar results as our patented media bias ratings. So you can see here in this demo that they took the link from an article, they put it into the bias checker. Bias checker said, well, this is center. And here's why. So it provides an explanation. And then you can actually get detailed analysis. And what it's doing right now is it's using AI to actually pull out the examples of how did it came to that rating. And I'll give it a minute to get that. It goes a little bit through how to use this tool and some contextual explanation of the do's and don'ts of AI results, and then some detailed analysis where you can also give feedback. So that's the bias checker. That'll be part of school memberships here in about a month. And then the other thing that's coming out that I think teachers would be interested in is what we're calling daily front pages. So this is another tool for digital literacy. Students can view the home pages from several major news media websites for the current day and really compare what are news outlets prioritizing? how are they writing about it? And they can look across at a glance. And so school members will be able to view past archives of homepages so they can look back at key events that happened and see how different outlets were talking about it. So both of these features will be included in school memberships, which are a fairly new offering from AllSides. And then in addition to premium features, you get ad-free access, so students can log in and not have to deal with any of the ads. And then obviously additional compliance measures like data sharing agreements in place and things like that to make sure you're compliant with data privacy laws. So you can learn more about that also at allsides.com/schools. We're going to pause there. And that's the end of really kind of our content that we're going to present. Before we dive into our activity, I just want to check any questions. Let's see, Matthew had a question of if it will be recorded. This is being recorded and it's going to be shared out to everyone who registered. We had about 100 something people register, and looks like about 30 people are there, which is pretty typical. So I'm happy for you, or happy that those of you made the time to attend live, but we'll send it all to all of you after. And then I really hope this content gave you something new that you can apply in your classroom to save time, to avoid backlash, so that you can discuss hot topics. And so that's what our activity that we're going into is actually going to do. Sorry, one more question before I go there. Someone asked, is there a way to see just news related to the 2024 presidential election? Great question. We're actually, if you go to @AllSidesNow on Twitter or X, our editorial team is providing live tweeting analysis of the debate tonight. So that's one immediate place you can go. But we'll also share a link in the chat to where all of our news analysis has. Our editorial team does a really great job doing roundups of where each candidate stands on different topics and issues.
Yeah, if you're on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, tonight will be a great showcasing of all the different content that AllSides offers, because we're going to be posting a ton of stuff in real time as it comes up during the debate. So if you're there on that platform, tune in. AllSides Now, as Alice said.
Great. Okay, so I'm going to dive into our activity. We wanted to just give you some hands-on practice through a little mini lesson discussing hot topics in the classroom. So for this mini lesson, we're going to use a tool I haven't actually mentioned yet. It's called AllStances. So AllStances helps us break free from the left-right spectrum. One of the main criticisms of AllSides is, well, there's more than just left and right, which we totally agree. But it is complicated to describe something that's closer to reality, which is that multiple perspectives exist on an issue. And so that's what AllSides is trying to do, trying to fill that gap. So we're going to talk about cancel culture. So now I'll go back to Mentimeter if you toggled away, and you will see 4 viewpoints on the screen in a moment from 1 to 4. And you're going to rank them. 1 is the viewpoint you agree with the most. So go ahead and go to the next screen. Great. So take a minute, read those stances, and you're going to rank them by which one, number 1 is what you agree with most, down to what you agree with the least. See some responses coming in. Don't forget to hit submit at the bottom so that your response actually gets recorded. once you have ranked your responses. Great. So looks like we've got a pretty clear, number one ranking, which is that certain views should warrant cancellation. The next two are tied, and then the last there are people who prioritize cancel culture doesn't exist, or kind of more agree with that. So now what we're going to do is you're actually going to go read our all stance on cancel culture. Here's your directions, and then I'm going to vocalize them as well. So you're going to go to this link that I just chatted into the directions. You're going to read about cancel culture. So remember the perspective that you ranked number 4, so the perspective you least agree with. Read the section, just the section on that perspective. And then after you are done reading, put the perspective you least agree with in your own words. And I have this long Google Drive link here is a worksheet that you could use to kind of help you put it in your own words. We're going to give about 10 minutes to do this. If you are done, just raise your hand on, well, this isn't Zoom, raise your hand on GoToWebinar when you are done so that I can kind of gauge where people are at. So I'm going to start the timer now for 10 minutes. Go ahead and start. Right, we're closing in on the 5-minute mark. Hopefully you're about done reading and you're starting to put it in your own words. Um, and just a reminder to raise your hand when you are done rewriting the stance you least agree with in your own words. Right, got 1 more minute. Okay, so that might not have been enough time, I recognize, for that heavy of a lift. Um, but this would be a good time to have people talk to each other if you're in a classroom and actually try to argue the stance they least agree with, of course. Because of the restrictions of this setting, what I'm actually going to ask you to do is re-rank the stances. So if you can go to the next slide, Preeti. You're actually going to see the exact same question pop up on Mentimeter for you. And I'd like you to rank them again from the one you most agree with as first, all the way down to fourth. And don't forget to hit submit. I'll give you 10 more seconds to get your answers in. Okay, this is great. So take a look at the responses from us as a group. One thing that I noticed, if you remember the visual from the last one, certain views should warrant cancellation was really far out there, and then cancel culture doesn't exist, was much smaller. And now everything's a little bit closer together. And it doesn't always happen with this exercise, but what often happens is the result that we got, which is that we see less polarization. It's not that we agree with the other side, but we understand it a bit better. And that's what something like this helps us as humans do. So this is just one example of how you could use AllSides materials in a lesson. You can go to all stances and do this with many hot topics. Henry and the team are always adding more. They're also updating topics fairly regularly. And you can make suggestions to him if you see something on a topic that you think isn't quite accurate. So thanks for playing along on that activity. Thank you for joining us for this webinar. We put a lot of work into this. There are a lot of people behind the scenes at AllSides making it happen. And I hope that this webinar helped give you some tools to feel more confident teaching current events as we head into this presidential election year. Because what you are doing with students and working with the next generation and building their critical thinking skills to analyze these important issues is so important. So thank you for that. I hope you explore everything that we talked about today at allsides.com/schools. I'll share that one more time. You can also look into school memberships, and then there's a code here if you want to sign up at mismatch.org. Early adopters is our code for a free conversation, which you are more than welcome to use. I'm going to stick around here for a little bit, just in case people have additional questions. But otherwise, that is the end of our content. So thank you. I have a question here from somebody. I'm in Portugal. Does Mismatch work with students from around the world or just in the US? Great question. Thank you, Gina. It can work. We have an option for outside the US. The only issue is the time zones are restricted currently. If you want to actually email me and I'll send you that. We can absolutely work with you. We're just trying to keep it a little more US centric now as it gets started. It's pretty small. We've got about 30 classrooms on Mismatch right now that are matching with each other. But we can absolutely work with you if it's something you're interested in doing. So thanks. Let's see if there's any other questions. Okay, excellent. All right, Henry, Adriel, Preeti, thank you so much for all of your time on this. And thank you everyone who attended. Have a great summer.
Thanks, everyone.
Yes, have a great summer. Thanks, everyone.